is a flagel? It's actually a combined word, flat and bagel. If you've never seen one, imagine a big, typical pillowy bagel that's just been run over by a truck. It is now flat, has a hole in the middle, and is a larger disc. The advantage of a flagel over today's big, pillowy bagels is that it recaptures the chew of the original bagel of years ago by having very little in the middle and a lot of crust on both sides. And it comes encrusted in sesame, poppy, or all the usual bagel toppings. One of the problems, however, is that you can't get a really good whole wheat flagel. Every now and then you do see whole wheat bagels, but those are usually not 100% whole wheat. And I decided to try to see if I could create a whole wheat bagel that actually, a flagel that actually tasted good. I didn't want to use a bagel dough because I broke my KitchenAid mixer making my typical bagel dough, so I've sworn off that. But I have a very nice bialy dough. You may have seen my bialy video that worked nicely, and I wondered if I converted it to all whole wheat, what would happen? I gave it a try. I tried a regular roll version, and I tried a flagel version with a slightly different shaping technique, and I was very pleased. It produced a very nice result. Now, to make the dough, you will need, and dump this all together in one big mixing bowl, you'll need 5 cups of whole wheat flour, and I've been using the dark whole wheat flour. If you prefer white whole wheat flour, you could use that too. It's just about the same nutritional profile. Now to that, I'd add a tablespoon of instant yeast, 2 teaspoons of salt, regular granulation, table salt, a tablespoon of sugar, and 2 tablespoons of vital wheat gluten. That helps give it a little extra chew and is a pretty critical ingredient unless you're starting out with a very high gluten flour to begin with. You mix that all up until the ingredients are combined, and then you'll add about 2 1/4 cups of warm water, the usual yeast rising temperature of water, and you'll mix it. And you'll look at that and say, I've made a mistake, it can't be right, because it will look very soupy. Well, we want to keep the dough loose and moist so that we don't get a dry product. Now, the deviation from the regular bialy recipe that I used is that rather than rushing to knead, what you'll do at this point is cover it and let it sit for 20 minutes. This will allow the whole wheat flour to absorb some of the moisture and will give you a better read on how much you have to put in. And apparently it also starts facilitating the kneading process, or exactly how that does that, I really have no idea. In bread baker talk, it's called an autolyse, A-U-T-O-L-Y-S-E, and is a standard technique in in the artisanal breads. Well, you come back 20 minutes later, put in your dough hook, give it about 3 minutes. If you're using a KitchenAid mixer, number 2 setting is what the KitchenAid people recommend so that you don't burn out your motor. And add flour, whole wheat flour, tablespoon at a time until it clears the bowl and is still tacky, but when you touch it, you don't come away with a handful of wet dough. When you've reached that stage, you cover it up and you give it 2 rises, 2 full rises, and at the end of the second rise, you're ready to do the shaping and give it its final rise. This dough has been through its 2 rises. I just pulled it out of the oven. I usually keep it in the oven with a container of boiling water to keep it moist. My oven does not have a proofing cycle. That was the next level up and not worth all that extra money. You turn it out, and as you can see, it's quite soft, but it doesn't stick. This is your perfect dough. I did grease the bowl The instructions in the bialy recipe that I follow say not to grease it. I don't think it makes that much difference, and I think it makes the little bit of oil doesn't affect the dough, makes it a little easier to handle. Now, the game plan at this point is to shape them. I'm going to make 16. Let them rise. I have a board here that's covered with flour because it's sticky. I don't want it sticking to the board. And yes, it's a lot of flour, but you need it. And once these have been shaped, I'll cover them with greased plastic wrap. I usually just spray it with a baking spray like Pam. You want to cover all of them because anything that's not covered will tend to get crusty, and you don't want that. And you'll give it a rise until the balls are puffy. And here's the way I do the shaping. I'm using a rule pat mat, which is a silicone mat that's made for rolling out, rather than a silpat mat, which is made for baking. This does not skid. And on granite, if something is going to skid, it will skid. And if you're really fussy, you can scale it out. You know, weigh your total weight divided by 16. Using grams is probably the best way to do this. Well, all right, it's not perfect. As you can see, this is still tacky, but this is still about what you want. And I divide it up into quarters, and then I'll work with each quarter at a time, dividing each of those into 4 parts. Now, working with one part, since you need not sit here and watch me do all 16, but let me get started, is I'll take this. If I need a little flour, put a little flour in my hands, but I don't want a lot. Divide it up. I'm using a soft bench scraper, or bowl. Actually, this is more of a bowl scraper, because anything tougher than that is going to cut into my mat, and you really don't want to do that. So I have my 4 starting flagels in their earliest stage. I need a little flour on my hands, and the way I like to shape it is you let it drag on the mat. You don't want it skittering around. Enough flour if you need on your hands so it doesn't stick. You round your fingers around it, and you roll it. And what happens here is it forms a nice ball, and on the bottom you don't see any openings. And I put that here. When you get really good, you can do them 2 at a time. Imagine any bakeries that still do this kind of thing insists on speed. So this can be done quite quickly. And you sort of scope out where you're going to need to put them. They will rise. They don't need to be perfect. And you're going to let them rise for anywhere between 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the temperature. Since you're going to be smashing them down, you don't have to worry about over-rising them slightly. The danger in over-rising is that they're fragile, so if you're going to slash something that's over-risen, it will collapse. Here you want it to collapse, so it's really not a big deal. These are not fidgety and fussy. They are very forgiving. So I will go on and make the remaining 12, 4, 8, 12, and put them in the oven. And when they're risen, I'll come back, pull them out, and I'll show you the final smashing and shaping of them. It's about 45 minutes since I put the rolls into proof, and as you can see, they've risen really very nicely. What I'm going to do now is to shape them and then immediately bake them. I have my oven heating. It's heating to 450 degrees, and these should bake for between 15 and 17 minutes. I've lined 2 sheets with baking parchment, which is the easiest way to go, and I'm going to shape them. So let's see how we do. As you can see, my sleeves are falling down. All right, they don't stick, and this is what I did last time, so let's see how it works. Put it face side down. On the sesame seeds, I find the Asian markets seem to have the best value in sesame seeds. All different kinds. These are just the natural ones. Right now, it's getting more embedded on one side than the other, but that's okay. Every roll has an upside and a downside. Now, what I didn't do last time was try to make it look like a bagel. I left it round like a disc. So I'm not sure if this is going to be a good idea or a bad idea, but we'll see. Okay, I'll take another one and do exactly the same thing. I put it face side down because that's the stickier part. Got it nice and embedded. I have more sesame seeds at the ready. You're going to go through a lot of sesame seeds, so don't get one of those little 2-ounce jars that you get for a hideous price in the supermarket. You know, try to get them in bulk. Middle Eastern stores probably would have them as well. Now these are going to go in the oven as soon as they're shaped. They've already had their rising. The excess flour will just disappear in. You've gotten breads dusted with flour. It's quite acceptable, and no one's going to see it on the underside anyway. So what I'm going to do is shape the 2 sheets. I will get them on 2 sheets because that's all I have room for, even if I have to juggle them a little bit back and forth. And then I will put them in and bake them. So let me finish these and then I'll show you them as I put them in the oven. Well, they're all shaped. I have 8 on this sheet and I have 8 on the sheet over there. I have my shelves arranged in 2 positions in the oven. I'm going to put them in now and I'm going to check them after about 15 minutes. And if they need a little more time, I'll give it to them and I'll show you what it looks like when we take them out. Wish me luck. Here goes. I just took these out of the oven. One rack required 15 minutes. The other, one sheet took 15 minutes. The other sheet needed another 2 minutes or so. And as you can see, I ran out of room, which means there's nothing left to do but simply to eat one. There. Chewy. A lot of crust on the top and bottom, nice weedy flavor, lovely sesame flavor. If you'd like, you could make an everything topping, add a little salt, some poppy seeds, onion flakes, garlic, whatever you'd like, or just leave them plain. But here you have, not really authentic, properly called, I guess you'd call them bialys, but that sounds even weirder than flagels, but we will call these whole wheat flagels, and we will declare them a success. So if you feel ambitious and want something that you simply cannot get in the store, and I probably have sesame and flour on my face, but that's the life of a baker, then go ahead and give it a try. I guarantee it will impress and you will have a lot of fun. Thanks for watching.